Good afternoon. My name is Turner Bitten. I'm the Executive Director here at Westview Media. I'd like to welcome you to the next event in our Candid Candidates series. Today, we're joined by Mayor Trent Staggs from Riverton. Welcome, Mayor.
Hi, thanks for having me.
We're very glad you could join us. Sorry, my computer's giving me some feedback. We're very glad you could join us. For those that are watching live, this is being live streamed on Facebook. And if you have questions for Mayor Staggs, please feel free to submit them in the comment section. To get us started, Mayor, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and that kind of thing.
Yeah, well, thanks again for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity. You and I were discussing this is such a atypical year, and to be able to have this forum so I can reach out and speak to all of your residents within the west side there. Salt Lake City is fantastic. I grew up here in Salt Lake County. I in the south part of the county at South Jordan, attended Bingham High School, went on to the University of Utah for my undergraduate degree, majoring in political science and also studying economics, and then proceeded to get an MBA, a Master's in Business Administration from Brigham Young University. And for the past 20, 25 years of my professional career, I've been involved principally in three industries. I've worked at Morgan Stanley and in the finance sector, ran my own nationwide mortgage brokerage company, and then a few other businesses that I've owned and sold off. And then most recently, I'm working with a publicly traded company as an advisor. And my time in politics started about 7 years ago. I decided to go ahead and run for the city council in Riverton. And then 3 years ago, ran for mayor and was elected there. So I'm almost through my third year of being the mayor of Riverton City in the south part of the county there. We're just shy of 50,000 residents and have really, really enjoyed my service in local government. I think that's where a huge impact can be made, and made a conscious decision then to be involved in local government.
Well, thank you. So you are running for Salt Lake County Mayor. And the first question I'd like to ask you about that role is what you think the most important role that the Salt Lake County Mayor plays.
Boy, I think one of the most important roles the mayor plays is that of a unifier and someone that can build consensus. That is the role I have to play, or I'm playing as well with respect to my city. We have a 6-member council form of government. I only vote in the event of a tie. And so largely as a mayor, I've had to lead out on a vision and then also build consensus and get things done. And the county mayor, I think, is also what is the most important role. It's very similar in that as a county mayor, you're leading an executive position that is the second largest executive role in the state of Utah next to the governor. So you have to be able to proffer up your own vision and leadership, and then you've got to build consensus. You have to work with the 16 city mayors and councils and the 5 townships that we have here in our great county to be able to move things forward.
Thank you. So was there a specific moment or kind of what made you decide to jump into the county mayor's race?
It was a combination of things, kind of culminated over the last couple of years. Being in city government, we interact with the county often, and that interaction really left me scratching my head on a few occasions. We now, as a city of Riverton, have left 3 county-wide or county-led services, and at every turn, we've actually saved money for our residents. We have a higher level of service, and now I think we offer a much higher level of transparency and accountability. We left a county-wide taxing district that paid for our contract with Unified Police Department. Leaving that, we ended up saving about $1.3 million a year in property tax for our residents. And then we took it a step further and actually self-provided law enforcement as of a year ago, July. We were able to get 9 more officers for the same amount of money that we were contracted to pay to Unified Police. And then most recently too, we left the County Animal Control Services. County Animal Control Services wanted to double the amount that they were charging us. I ended up saying thanks, but no thanks. And we ended up doing a public-private partnership with a local vet clinic. And there again, I think our residents are getting more value. It's more convenient. They don't have to drive down to 3900 South. And we have a vet on call 24/7. So I would contend that even our animals were getting better service. So it was this experience that led me to really start investigating the county budget. The county budget has grown $500 million in the last 5 years, from 2014 to 2019. We're on a calendar year. The last year's closed out year, we're up 500 million. The Salt Lake County budget is now larger, 200 million larger than Clark County, Nevada, and they have twice as many residents to serve. And so we've seen this exponential growth in government. In the county mayor's office specifically, the county mayor's administration has grown over $5 million in just the last few years. My opponent has 6 deputy mayors that are highly compensated. And I think that there's this huge growth in government that is now, according to my opponent, necessitated a tax increase. She called for one. We have a $16 million tax increase hitting every county resident this year. And she's also called for indexing property tax to inflation, which would automatically increase taxes every single year. So I felt like that's a bad idea. Something needs to be done to restrain government. I have a record in Riverton of actually lowering taxes while improving services. We just talked about a few examples. And with my business background and experience, I think that needs to be brought to bear here in county government so we can rein that in.
Thank you. So the next thing, it kind of dovetails with what you talked about in your last response, but what are some of the biggest issues that you're seeing, and particularly for voters who are trying to determine who to vote for in the county mayor's race? What would be the biggest reason that you would tell them to vote for you? I know you kind of covered it, but want to give you another opportunity if there's other issues that you'd like to talk about.
Well, thanks. Yeah, I think there are 3 things. One is my record on taxes and spending, and that of my opponent, it's markedly different. And then 2 is my business background and experience. I've been able to innovate. We have to do that in the private sector. My opponent has 12 years in county government and really hardly any private sector experience. And I think that's important when you're talking about a role this size. The county mayor is to represent over a third of the population of the state of Utah. We're the largest county by far. We have 50% of the gross domestic product of the state. And the county mayor also sits on boards at the Point of the Mountain, the Inland Port, and a lot of other commissions that are going to shape our economy and development for decades to come. And I think it's invaluable that you have somebody with that record that can represent the county residents. And lastly, it's my ability to offer up a plan. I did that in Riverton City. That was the first order of business being elected mayor, is we, for the first time, created a vision and a mission statement and a strategic plan of 8 points. I've laid out plans on a number of issues at trentstaggs.com that relate to affordable housing, to homelessness, to the opioid epidemic, to taxes and spending, how to address growth smartly, how to do smart development. That really is a factor that motivated me and got me into this race, because I live in the southwest part of the county where we've accounted for almost 3/4 of all the population growth since 2000 and have over half the undeveloped property left. We have to be able to have a plan, and I think that's lacking here at the county. So taxes and spending, experience matters, and having a plan and being able to execute on that with respect to growth and economic recovery, you name it. It's there at my website. I've offered up those plans, and I've not seen that offered up by my opponent.
Well, thank you. As I was doing my research for this conversation, one of the things that stuck out to me on your website was smart growth. And without getting too much into the weeds, if you would just kind of explain to folks who are watching how you approach development. I know you've been mayor of Riverton, which is a growing city, and just kind of explain your views on development and growth and kind of how you would manage it.
This really came front and center for me in 2018. We had a large project that was announced the Olympia Hills project in unincorporated county along the West Bench. But that project area was a tenth of the size of my city of Riverton, and was proposed then to have almost as many residents with over 10,000 homes on 900 acres. So that really acted as a rallying call, kind of bringing mayors together in that area. And we took the unprecedented step of actually collaborating and saying, look, we can't just plan in a silo anymore. We've got to work together, or we're going to diminish the quality of life throughout the valley. We're talking open space, air quality, transportation, access to public transportation and transit is far and few between in that part of the county. And so we came together as mayors. We offered up, we're in the middle of what we're calling a visioning framework. We're almost done with that. And that type of effort, I think, needs to be taken to the county. It hasn't been, and it's really bewildering to me, because that is a huge role for the county mayor to be able to lead out on development, on growth, on smart growth, and working with those cities in the county, really understand what their development needs are, where their bottlenecks are occurring, and lead out. And one of the things I've done in my city is we've got a decent sized development that's occurring along between Bangerter and Mountain View corridor. And so there's definitely a place for growth, for densities, let's say. But it has to be along, in my view, major transportation or transit corridors, and access to public transportation or transit. And that's what I think is largely missing. The county has a ton of property that we need to conclude an audit. There hasn't been an audit finished yet. And in fact, Scott Anderson of Zions Bank produced an opinion piece over 2 years ago that said unlocking the value of public assets. We need to conclude the audit. There's a lot of county property that fits that description along I-15 or major transportation corridors or transit lines, where I think the county can work with private development to make a dent in the housing gap and the affordability through, I think, some pretty creative means that we've laid out on our website at trentstaggs.com.
Thank you. I'd just like to remind folks who are watching live, if you have a question for Mayor Staggs, please feel free to submit those, and we'll get to as many as possible. On the subject of housing, I'd like to kind of transition over to talking about affordable housing and give you an opportunity to talk about your vision for affordable housing in the county.
Yeah, no, I think that we do have a housing gap issue. Based on various reports, we're looking 40 to 50,000 housing units that we are short. Household formation has outstripped supply. And what do? There is only a certain amount of land, and we have to be able to develop it in a really smart way. Not everybody may be able to live here in the county, but I think that we have a lot of room for improvement. And so what we've talked about on my website is largely to look at this audit of county assets and find opportunities where the county might be able to work with private development. And the three major input costs for housing really is the land, the materials, and the labor. And so if the county is contributing the property to, say, a special purpose entity or a vehicle of development, the county taxpayers aren't going to be any worse for wear. They will still own their percentage ownership, and that asset will actually appreciate in value, in my view. But then a developer can come in and create housing without a land cost. So it conceivably is going to be much less expensive. And the number of units that can be placed up there, I think it can make a very big difference in terms of not just adding more stock, housing stock to the county, but it can be done in a very affordable way. And so that is something directly the county can do with the assets that they own, potentially. And when it comes to unincorporated county, there is a huge opportunity to work with cities and identify areas along, again, major transportation or transit lines There's some talk along the west side of having rail produced that can handle both commuters and commercial traffic. And there might be opportunities for that to develop in a way that can really address this affordability problem. So through zoning of county property, auditing county property and working with private development when and where we can, and then also just using some influence with the state legislature as a county mayor to ensure that the transportation that we so desperately need in many parts of the county is there. I mean, Bangor and Mountain View corridor, for example, are going to cost $1.5 billion to complete and turn into an expressway. And we need a county mayor that's going to be up there on the Hill and ensuring that we get those transportation dollars completed. Finishing those is going to be a huge impact on our air quality. And then, of course, public transportation. We've got a plan for that too on buses. And I think we might have an opportunity to get into that. But that is the plan for affordable housing and something I think the county mayor can meaningfully accomplish within the first year, if not the first year, definitely the first term in office.
Thank you. Before we get into public transit, I'd like to hit on another topic that you briefly mentioned, which is air quality. It's another thing that I noticed on your website that you mentioned quite frequently and wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about that as well.
Yeah, thank you. It's important to me. You know, I'm running as a Republican. I'm a fiscal conservative, but air quality is definitely something important to me. And I've talked to organizations that represent air quality interests, and they said, Trent, you're the only candidate we've seen that actually has forwarded a plan. We have a specific plan. It's 5 points. The first is telework. That's been a mode that we've transitioned to or moved to during COVID by, out of necessity. But I would like to be able to see that extended beyond and have a certain percentage, whether it be 15, anywhere 15, maybe upwards of 20% of the workforce, if they can work from home long term. That is something I think we need to incorporate into their annual performance reviews and see if county employees can work from home, if we can accommodate, because that's probably been one of the only benefits I can see from this pandemic is the air quality had improved as we saw the number of vehicles traveling on the road significantly decline. And we need to do our part. The county's a huge employer. We have over 4,000 employees, again, $1.5 billion budget. So we can lead by example here and work on not only our own employees, but reach out to the private sector, those that have that are major employers, and see if they can also adopt this best practice for telework. That's number one. Number two is fleet management. Again, with having as many vehicles as we do, there's no reason why all of our vehicles can't be tier 3 gasoline. I did this in Riverton. We ended up finding it was better to move from owning vehicles and older vehicles at that and transitioning to a 3-year lease, a rotational policy. It actually was better for the taxpayer and it's better for our air. I want to do an audit like I was talking about, not just with land, but with buildings. And so we need to do an energy efficiency audit that we have not done at the county in terms of the number of buildings that we have and make sure that these buildings don't contribute to our poor air quality through through venting or other means that may contribute negatively to air quality. There's a lot of grants and programs out there that we can avail ourselves of and should to ensure that county buildings are not a significant polluter to our air. I also want to look at public transportation. Salt Lake County, UTA, and speaking with the board chair there, Carlton Christensen, the budget for just Salt Lake County operations for buses is about $100 million. And our sales tax, we have slivers of that sales tax that go to the county that are then used for mass transit and for public transportation. And so I think we need to look at a new approach here. We've seen ridership decline because of COVID. It's coming back. $100 million budget. Only $13 million, though, is collected at the fare box through bus passes or one time, somebody coming up and just paying for a fare. It's only 13–14%. I mean, my gosh, we're almost covering the cost of this entirely by the taxpayer. And I want to start the conversation and move into the direction of near free buses for every county resident. I think that's the lowest hanging fruit. In our city of Riverton, I approved years ago while on the council a locally preferred alternative that would connect the Red Line Daybreak station and come through. But the federal funding is nowhere in sight, the state funding as well. So how can we really move the ball right now? I think it's with buses, and it can really help the most people quickly. So if you look at a $20 to $30 a month bus pass type of option, I think you'll see more revenue than the $13 or $14 coming into UTA. And then that would also allow more core bus routes to be established and to increase the frequency with which those bus lines are operating, which is going to increase ridership. We'll have more and more people availing themselves of buses, and that will significantly help our air. And then lastly, I talk about smart growth in the air quality plan. What we cannot do is to approve projects like the one I spoke of, Olympia Hills, that is up against Butterfield Canyon, beautiful, beautiful canyon, that has no east-west connectivity, no major connectivity to transportation, definitely no public transit or transportation. I use the analogy that it's at the end of a cul-de-sac, and you're going to pack all that density there. There's a place for it, yes, along major transportation and transit corridors, but not there. And so what's going to happen now? By virtue of my opponent really pushing for and approving that project, not vetoing it, like even Ben McAdams said he would have vetoed it again. He did in 2018. By keeping that there, we're going to have tens of thousands of vehicles now that are forced to just use a vehicle and travel outside that area. And it's only going to exacerbate the congestion that we already have in that part of the valley, and it's going to worsen our air quality. And so through smart planning efforts like the ones we've been talking about here, I think that is going to be key in addressing the air quality that we all want. I know we want to improve.
I'm going to give you a little bit of a break because I asked a bunch of questions in pretty rapid succession, and just remind folks that are watching live that if you have a question for Mayor Staggs, please feel free to submit it. I'm going to move on to the first audience question that I received, and it was actually one in advance that came in, and it was from Kirk, and he asked, as county mayor, and I'm paraphrasing, I should say, but Kirk asked, what would you do as county mayor to support the improvement and protection of the Jordan River corridor?
Oh boy, that's a great question. In fact, I love the Jordan River corridor. I mean, my city of Riverton that's its namesake, Riverton. And while I was on the city council back in 2014, I actually moved the city of Riverton for the first time, actually joined the Jordan River Commission. And we're still a participant on the Jordan River Commission today. The council member that replaced me is now our board member there. And I've been very supportive of the Jordan River Commission and of their blueprint along the Jordan River and how development should occur. So I'm familiar with that already. I think that's a great question. And this is an asset of the county. We pushed to create wayfinding signs along the Jordan River to complete that. You see so many people availing themselves of jogging, cycling. This is a great asset of the county, and I think we need to improve it. And I know Representative Mike Winder, for example, was even talking about making this a state park or a state resource protected that way. And I think that we need to do all that we can to protect the Jordan River and to allow people to even recreate on it. We've talked about having areas of the river where we've got boat put-ins, other things that we can do. I'm all in favor of that, and I think the county, given this runs through so many different municipalities, has a huge role that it can play with the Jordan River Commission and ensuring that we maintain such a great asset.
Thank you. So kind of dovetailing with our previous conversation about public transit, wanted to follow up with a question about how you as county mayor would prioritize bicycling and kind of pedestrian access, that type of thing in your transit planning.
Well, I think active transportation planning is it's very important. And the Southwest Visioning study that I referred to, the cities again of West Jordan, South Jordan, Riverton, Harriman, Bluffdale, and Copperton Township have come together. They're in the middle of this study. Active transportation is a big component. I give you a great example. If cities are just planning in the silo, we lose opportunities for connectivity of trails. Riverton butts up against Harriman, and we were about to approve a project that had a park over here and a park over here. And we got together through this planning process and said, hey, we should aggregate the park space, have a larger regional park, ensure that the trail along the Welby-Jacob Canal there doesn't just stop at a border, but trails have got to be, and active transportation has got to be a huge part. I came out recently, there's a project that is in Yellow Fork Canyon. They've been at it for years. They've been trying to get the county to approve this project. It's a bit complicated because you've got county ownership, Bureau of Land Management or federal lands, and also a Rio Tinto lands. But completing the Bonneville shoreline trails on both the east and the west side of the county and the canal trail system would be a huge priority for me and something that I've committed to do, because active transportation trails in particular are important. The question also asked about biking and bike trails. And I think that is also very important, that we plan accordingly. Again, we don't want trails that or bike lanes, that were on Redwood Road, for example, that have recently, with the widening of Redwood, they've been terminated suddenly at one spot and then moved over to say 1300 West. No, we need to ensure that the bike lanes that we have are there. We need input from people that utilize the lanes and from the cities, that we've got a great continuous trail system for both walking trails, hiking trails, mountain biking trails, and then also biking trails on our roadways.
Thank you. We received another audience question. This comes from our friends at Race Swami. They're a local swimming group. They teach local youth to swim and provide a whole bunch of different services. But they asked, and I'm paraphrasing again, but what your plans or vision for our parks and recreation centers would be, specifically in communities where there are fewer resources. So they use an example of the Redwood Recreation Center as an example. Give you an opportunity to respond. Oh, you are muted. Sorry.
Well, yeah, sorry about that. So one of the reasons why I decided to run for county mayor was empowering communities, is what I say. Fiscal responsibility, empower communities, and smart growth. And I've seen firsthand the disparity on how zoo, arts and parks, tourism, recreation, cultural, sales tax dollars are distributed throughout the county. That's over $100 million a year that is handed out. But then also with respect to parks and recreation facilities. Sadly, it's become far too political in how some of these centers are put up. And I think that we need to take a much different approach. We need to look at needs, just to the point of the question here, where the needs are. I've also, I've talked with several communities where they have needs and for recreation facilities. And this goes back to the audit that I was talking about with county assets. I think the result of that audit is going to be that some facilities or some properties of the county could be end up being sold off or shuttered. I'm not talking about recreation facilities. I'm talking about other county buildings. And through that, or through these partnership developments with private development, we can create a revenue stream that will end up funding other facilities that we need throughout the county that aren't yet being met. So that's what I want to do. Within my first 100 days, I've committed to an audit of all county facilities, and then to come back and have some recommendations on where we can put new facilities that wouldn't be additive to the taxpayer in terms of the burden. I think we can get this done.
Thank you. To transition just a little bit, I'm going to go back to my standard questions. I haven't seen any additional audience questions come in. I kind of like to turn to one of the other roles of the county mayor, which is hiring department heads. And the question that I've been asking folks in this type of position is that hiring is policy. So when you're selecting folks that will be managing your departments, that in and of itself is a form of public policy. And I just wanted to ask your general approach to how you select folks for that type of position, and how you would go about filling out your administration.
Yeah, it's a great question. When I was elected mayor of Riverton in November of 2017, I spent an inordinate amount of time speaking with every single person in our city that was at a supervisory level or above. And even though I'm a part-time mayor there and paid part-time, at the time we didn't have a city manager. So we ended up hiring ultimately a city manager, and we conferred on all of the individuals there. But I think that's very important. What I want to try to create, I want to be very slow to hire and slow to terminate anybody. I want to create a culture where of culture of meritocracy, really. That's what we've tried to implement in Riverton. Irrespective of how long you may have been working somewhere, we want to be able to provide opportunities for those that are best qualified, have exhibited the most, the best performance reviews, to find themselves in opportunities at a supervisory level or above. So that's been my approach in Riverton, is to sit down and interview everybody, try to understand where they're going or where they'd like to go. If there's a good fit then for these department level head positions within the existing employee base, then I want to be able to try to promote from within. If we find that we need a different skill set and something outside, I'm slow to do that. But because again, the county has 4,000 employees, I think there's an incredible number of people that are very talented that are working for the county. In fact, I know that there are. I've talked to several employee groups, but we need to ensure that we create a culture of meritocracy and allow people that are doing a great job to be able to be rewarded. If for some reason we can't find that skill set there, then end up taking that out to the public generally, and being able to find the best and the brightest minds that can come in, particularly in my administration, for the mayor's office in particular. I've been a little critical, as I stated, with 6 deputy mayors currently. There's about 16 people, I've been told, in the mayor's office now. That's much more in number than what we've had through Peter Caroon, even Ben McAdams. And so I want to ensure that we have enough human resources to accomplish the goals that we'll lay out in a strategic plan that we don't have yet at the county. I did that in my city. We don't have it yet at the county, but that we're not having so many people that it's defeating the purpose. It makes it hard to get things done. And of course, we're not then being efficient with taxpayer money. But for my administration in particular, those roles we need, that's hopefully gives you a sense of my approach. And we need to have the best and brightest. I think we need people that are open to reimagining the way that county government has run. We can't just continue the status quo. I think we're on an unsustainable path. When I talk about having $500 million budget increase over the last 5 years, we need to pause and take a look at things and try to do things more creatively. Frankly, the population is still going to continue to grow. So I don't think that means shuttering a workforce. No, it's becoming more nimble. And that's exactly what I've done in Riverton. We have, I think, the lowest employees per 1,000 resident count than any of our surrounding cities and perhaps anywhere in the county. But what that allows us to do is to compensate those employees accordingly. And this year in Riverton, I actually proposed a 4% pay increase, even in the middle of COVID. You know, our budget year is July 1 through June 30. And so we offered a 4% pay increase when many other cities were cutting employees, and the state and Unified Fire and other organizations were offering no pay increases whatsoever. So I think that's the benefit of having that approach to human resources in particular.
Thank you. You briefly mentioned COVID, and I think I would be remiss if I didn't bring up the COVID-19 crisis. Just want to get your thoughts. Again, we don't have to get into the weeds on this, but just your general thought on the county's approach to COVID-19 and kind of how you would deal with an emergency or a crisis like this if you were mayor.
Yeah, no, it's a great question, very relevant. You know, I've been critical of the response, candidly. I have an opinion piece. I have an opinion piece coming out tomorrow in the Salt Lake Tribune. I'll let you guys are the first to know. But I had an opinion piece back in March when this first broke out, Turner, and the title of the article was the response to COVID-19 is not sufficient. I still don't think it's sufficient. I've been advocating for testing, universal repeat testing. That is the way that we're going to stop the spread. You know, masks have been implemented in this county, and my opponent has taken credit that this was turning, well, the case counts are up considerably this month. And my opponent said just last Monday in the Salt Lake Tribune that we're effectively out of options and inferred that we'd be looking at another shutdown. I don't think we are out of options. I think we have testing that we can do, even with mask compliance at 90 to 96% per the county's own audit that they did just the other month. And we're seeing masks being used all throughout schools. Look, they're an important tool, but I've been talking about testing for 7 months now. And the unfortunate thing is that when the county attempted to do mobile testing in many, even I think within your zip codes, in some zip codes that were seen as hotspots, they had to abandon the efforts within the first day. They were overwhelmed, they said. They couldn't even handle it. And so I think that response with respect to testing has been mismanaged. We've also seen people's personal identifiable information, which is a HIPAA violation. It was exposed on a county website for 5 or 6 days before the county finally took it down. And perhaps the most maddening thing to me is that the county, they received $203 million in CARES Act funding. $203 million. They got this directly from the federal government. The way the CARES Act was passed back in March, any municipality larger than 500,000 people received their CARES Act funding directly from the federal government. And so Utah County and Salt Lake County received monies. The state of Utah received money, $1.25 billion, but over $200 million. Guess how much of that we have now, we've used in 6 months? We've used just under $100 million. And a chunk of that has gone to cities, but the cities, we didn't receive that until just the other month. So this county administration sat on that for months and months. We could have been using, and they've only used 1.5 million of the 97 million they've used for testing. I mean, we have $100 million left here. What is going on? We could be using, we've got the technology in place. People could, via their mobile device or on their computer, we could have one of 100 different locations where they could come and be tested. We have a great bio and life science company or industry here in the county that has less invasive testing methods. We have a spit kit that was developed by a company in the county, and people can know very quickly whether they're COVID positive or not. And so my plan that I've been saying for 7 months now is test, test, test. Have hundreds, 100 or more locations throughout the county where people could sign up via an app, drive in, be tested, know almost immediately whether they have COVID. And that, I think, is the way you're going to stop the spread. That's what countries that have been successful, like South Korea and others, that's how they've managed this. It's through repeat universal testing. And I can't stress that enough. That's what I'd be using this $100 million for, to get a handle on this so that we can keep the economy going. I think it would be a disaster if we said that all the options are off the table. They're all used. We need to shut the economy down again, as my opponent is alluding to. We need to be doing testing.
Thank you. I'd like to give you another break really quickly and just remind folks who are watching live, if you have a question for Mayor Staggs, please submit it in the chat. We're getting toward the end of my questions, which means that I'll be turning over more to audience questions. So if you have one, be sure to submit that. The second to last question that I'd like to ask you from my pre-prepared questions is, let me rephrase that. Why don't we have you give your kind of closing argument, your elevator pitch, if you will, for folks that are watching?
Well, thank you. Yeah, I think that there are key differences between candidates for Salt Lake County Mayor. And in as much as, this is a great forum to be able to address those, really, you have, I have a background or a record of lowering taxes while improving services. My opponent has a record of increasing taxes this year to the tune of 16 million, wants to index property taxes to inflation so they'd automatically go up every single year. So that's the record with respect to taxes. With respect to spending, I have a record of innovating in municipal government that has lowered costs, increased value for residents. My opponent has a record, been on the county, in county government now for 12 years, 10 on the county council, of adopting and approving every single budget and tax increase. And now this budget has ballooned to $1.5 billion, $500 million increase in 5 years. So those are huge differences with respect to taxes and spending. I think with respect to background and professional background, I have my master's in business administration, 25 years of professional business experience, have owned my own businesses. That informs a lot of my policy and decision-making and innovation. My opponent does not have that. 12 years in county government. And lastly, the plans. I have a plan with respect to growth, air quality, affordable housing, homelessness. You can go to trentstaggs.com/issues and check out these plans. My opponent, I haven't seen anything offered up. Even with these plans, we've written, as we've referenced a few opinion pieces, anywhere from testing, COVID response, economic recovery. I've rolled out a plan for the county on economic recovery. So there's a lot of information out there. And I think that these are very key differences between myself and the current mayor. And so if we want to move forward as a county, we need to have somebody with a fresh perspective, a new way of doing things come in. If we keep electing the same people, I think we're going to have the same outcomes, the same problems. Taxes will continue to grow. Government spending will continue to go up exponentially. And it's just not sustainable. We have to rethink things. And I think I've demonstrated I can do that at city government, and we can take that approach to the county.
Thank you. I haven't seen any additional audience questions come in, so I want to give you, I know you've mentioned your website a number of times, but I'd like to give you an opportunity to share that one more time. And then are you on social media? How else can folks follow you and connect with your campaign?
Yeah, absolutely. TrentStaggs.com. You'll see there about me, my background, the issues, our priorities. You can also see a number of coalitions that we've created. I've been, as a city mayor now for 7 years, I've been in elected office in a nonpartisan role. So we have a coalition of Democrats for Staggs, running as a Republican. Obviously, we've got a lot of Republican support, but we also have a Latinos por Staggs and other community groups that have come and wanted to support our campaign. So our tagline is leadership that listens. I want to listen. I want to be able to listen to you and represent you. This is an elected office that is a representative office, and one that I think shouldn't be a career for individuals. But I want to come in and listen to you. That's our site. We've got a lot of broad-based support. I am on Facebook as well, Mayor Trent Staggs, and Twitter and Instagram. You can reach out to us there. You can also feel free to email me at votestags@trentstaggs.com. That's votestags@trentstaggs.com. And I'm happy to reply to your emails. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak about this race. Again, very important, larger than a congressional district, and I think having more impact on your life than these national races. So thanks again.
Yeah, I really appreciate your time today, and would just like to remind viewers, if you're not registered to vote, the deadline to register to vote by mail is October 23rd. Ballots are actually being mailed this week. And I would encourage everyone, we don't care who you vote for or how you vote. We just want you to get out and be sure to vote. And want to thank you, Mayor Staggs, for your time today. And I appreciate you sticking your neck out and deciding to get involved in the future of our county.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the time.
All right. Take care. Good luck.
Take care.
Bye-bye.